Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be talking about another expanded rogue archetype, the new Hisuian Arcanine from Lost Origin. I believe it's from Lost Origin? Yes, it is. I was very excited for this card to come out. I was a big fan of Granbull back from the Lost Thunder set. With a similar attack, Granbull's All Out does the same thing as Arcanine's Very Vulnerable. That translation sucks, by the way, whoever translated that. Come on, please. Why'd you call it Very Vulnerable? That's very weird to say. It does 10 plus 150 if you have no cards in your hand. So this deck focuses on being able to chain Arcanines and having no cards in hand. Now this has some advantages and some disadvantage over Granbull. The big advantage is that the attack costs 0 energy. That is huge. This deck plays no energy at all. The other advantage of this card has is that it gets to take advantage of fighting tricks that we'll get to later on in the list. You can kind of look right now. The big disadvantage this card has, though, is that it does not hit weakness against Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia. And while Fairy is not like the best weakness to hit in Expanded, it's one of the best because it hits the pesky Arceus, Dialga, and Palkia, the card that should have never been printed, for a clean one-hit KO. We don't have that luxury. A lot of times you're just going to lose to Arceus, Dialga, Palkia with this deck because it just doesn't one-hit KO it and win like that. This deck does have a lot of inherent weaknesses, but it's also a lot of fun to play. So let's get right into the list. Starting off with 4 copies of Growlithe with its defensive posture. There's 2 Hisuian Growlithes. There's one that just burns your opponent for free. This one is way better, trust me. Flip a coin if heads during your opponent's next turn. Prevent all damage done to Pokemon by attacks. Believe me, this attack has won me so many games of this deck. Just being able to block some damage for a little bit, that's absolutely incredible. You know, if you want to play the Singe one, go ahead. Just be prepared to lose a lot of games from starting Growlithe and not being able to get a second one on their field. This attack is incredible. Don't underestimate it. Second attack's not usable because we don't play energy. Arcanine, as stated once more, 130 HP means it is like not level ball or bull or anything, but sometimes you can actually tank hits. So very vulnerable is the build around. You're not ever going to retreat about it, so don't worry about that. That's the only thing you're worried about. The second attack is literally unusable. 1 copy of Slugma. This is the Fusion Strike Slugma. Really, it doesn't matter which one you play, but might as well play one with 80 HP because you don't get to take advantage of retreating or attacking with it. Nothing else to say about that Slugma. We play it for the Magcargo with the Smooth Over ability. Once during your turn, you may search your deck for a card, shuffle your deck, and then put the card on top, so it allows you to stack whatever card you like. It is absolutely incredible, and we're just going to skip a few cards and go to this, because, you know, you want to get that card, right? You want to get that card. How do you get that card? You get it with Radiant Venusaur, a brand new card from Pokemon Go. Once during your turn after you attack, once at the end of your turn after you attack, you may use this ability and draw cards until you have 4 in hand. I hate the Sword and Shield wording on cards, by the way. Can they just say, like, once at the end of your turn after you attack, you may draw cards until you have 4 in your hand, instead of you may use this ability, or like the Cinccino, you must discard a card from your hand in order to use this ability. Like, stop doing that. Just say discard a card from your hand, draw 2. So much easier. So what you use this for, sorry, that was a little mini rant there. I just hate Sword and Shield wording on cards, and it makes it way harder to read. After you attack, you get to draw more cards. You're going to set what cards you want with Magcargo. I do believe, in my opinion, this is way better than playing like a draw engine in this deck specifically, because you don't want to be drawing into cards that you want to discard. You want to set specific cards on the top of your deck and then Sunny Bloom into them to make sure that you are not like overly killing your resources, because you are going to have to thin your hand out usually by discarding every single turn. I'm going to move that back. 1 copy of Ditto Prism Star. This allows you to evolve into either Stage 1. It evolves into any Stage 1 Pokemon. That's its ability. So it gives you another out to Arcanine and another out to Magcargo. There are some potential, Pokemon you could add to this deck as Stage 1 techs. I just don't think they're worth playing necessarily. 1 copy of Diancie Prism Star. As long as it's on your bench, your fighting Pokemon do 20 more. This is the first of the fighting tricks that this deck takes advantage of. This deck is able, with all of the buffs in mind, to actually hit for 210 damage over the 160 that the Granbull hits out. If you just have Diancie, you're doing 180, which is still pretty good. We're KOing a lot of basic Vs and GXs with that. So, yeah, absolutely. Princess Cheers is great. One of the fighting tricks that we get to take advantage of. Also wonderful artwork by Kawayu. One copy of Galarian Meowth with its Evolution Roar. We don't play the Berserker, you may notice, though. Why do we play the Meowth? Discard 2 cards from your hand. Sounds terrible, like why would you just discard 2 cards from your hand? But actually, when you use another supporter, such as Guzma, Marnie, or Teammates, a lot of times you're not able to thin your hand down completely to 0. That's where the Meowth comes in. We want to be able to thin our hand down to 0 on turns where we use different supporter cards. So this Meowth gives us that out to doing it. A lot of times early game as well, this Meowth can be a real powerhouse just for getting your hand down to 0. There is the other option. There's a second card exactly like this, the Duskull from Cosmic Eclipse, but that's discard 3 cards. Honestly, I find that to be a lot less good. 3 cards is a lot more steep than 2. A lot of times you discard a card you want to use in order to do that. And in addition to that, it also has 40 HP, which is less than the Galarian Meowth's 60 HP. So I think that Meowth is better. One copy of Phione here from Cosmic Eclipse, the Whirlpool Suction. It's on your bench. You may have your opponent switch their active with their bench and then discard all cards to Phione, put it on the bottom of your deck. It's just a way for this deck to infinitely gust your opponent, because you're not going to be able to use Guzma many times in your game. You do have some gusting outs, but realistically you're not going to be gusting that often with this deck because you need to keep up the pressure. Phione allows you to at least force your opponent to give you something better to hit. Sometimes you'll get lucky and your opponent will only have 2 Pokemon in play and you'll get to hit exactly what you want. A lot of times your opponent's just going to try to throw garbage at the Hisuian Arcanine while they set up a bigger threat, and you want to just be hitting stuff that's not garbage. 3 copies of Marnie. Each player shuffles their hand, puts it on the bottom of the deck. You draw 5, your opponent draws 4. This is used for your setup. I do think Marnie here is way better than N. You're very easily able to play down a 5-card hand into 0, and you're also threatening your opponent's setup from the get-go. Marnie is absolutely incredible in here. Definitely been my supporter of choice. Helps set up really good early on. 2 copies of Grant. During this turn, your fighting Pokemon do 30 more damage. That sounds pretty alright, but it'd be like almost unusable in this deck because you're not able to get it with like Verse Seeker. Except it has a built-in Verse Seeker. During this turn, if Grant is in your discard pile, you may discard 2 cards except any Grant from your hand. If you do, put this Grant into your hand. So this is how you thin your hand down without Galarian Meowth. A lot of games you won't even use Galarian Meowth, because if you set up that perfectly and get that Grant going, you will be able to easily thin your hand down to 0 cards. If you have 2 cards in hand, Grant discards both of them, you get Grant back, and then you play Grant. And that is how, with Diancie and Grant, you are doing 210 damage for 0 energy with Very Vulnerable. It's a great card. Grant's been absolutely good. I would not run less than 2 because you absolutely need Grant, but I wouldn't run more than 3 because sometimes Grant's biggest weakness is that other Grant stop it from being discarded. So do be careful for Grant getting nerfed by Grant of all things. 1 copy of Guzma here to switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon when they're active, and then you switch your active Pokemon on your bench. Definitely better than Lysander because a lot of times you don't want things getting trapped, and I've used Guzma to get out of traps before. You have a lot of heavy retreaters in Magcargo, Diancie, and Radiant Venusaur, so you want to get those out of getting stuck if your opponent tries to stick you with something. 1 copy of Korrina. This is an arguable spot. Search your deck for a fighting and an item Pokemon. I just want an out to get specific items, ideally Float Stone, or our other tool, Focus Sash. It also allows you to get just, a lot of times in the early game, if you start with Korrina in your opening hand, you can get like a Growlithe and a Level Ball or a Quick Ball. Yeah. 1 copy of Teammates. You can only play this if one of your Pokemon is knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand. Shuffle your deck afterward. So it's absolutely great. Again, you have to watch out because you have to thin your hand down if you're not using Grant and you're using any of the other supporters. Teammates is pretty good though for getting exactly what you want, and if you have a hand that you can play down, like if you choose not to draw for the Venusaur because you know you have Teammates in hand, so you can just go grab the exact 2 cards you want, that can be pretty good. So we have a lot of ball cards coming up. I'm going to go through them pretty quick. A lot of search cards. Why do we play so many search cards? Because this deck doesn't need things like energy. It doesn't need all these bells and whistles because it's going to discard them anyway. So you just play a lot of search cards, which both allow you to pare down your hand very easily because you can just fail them, and it also allows you to set up flawlessly. 4 copies of Great Ball. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You may reveal a Pokemon you find there, put it into your hand, shuffle the other cards back. 4 copies of Level Ball, search your deck for a Pokemon with 90 HP or less. This gets your Phione, Meowth, Ditto, Magcargo, Slugma, and Growlithe. 4 copies of Quick Ball, discard a card from your hand, search your deck for a Pokemon. Once again, another example of Sword and Shield's terrible ruling here. You can only play this card if you discard another card from your hand. Just say, discard a card from your hand. Please fix this wording with Scarlet Violet. This is very annoying. It means less text goes on card, or less like unique text goes on cards. Cards are doing less because they have to put all these stupid clarifications that nobody needs. 3 copies of Ultra Ball, discard 2 cards from your hand, then search your deck for a Pokemon. This is, I guess, is another example of a unnecessary text right here, but they did fix that later on. Search your deck for Pokemon, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck afterward. Absolutely great. Allows you to pare down your hand pretty well to 0, and also allows you to get any Pokemon you want, including ones that can't be gotten by like Level Ball, like Arcanine or Diancie or Radiant Venusaur are often the targets of Ultra Ball. 2 copies of Evolution Incense searches an evolution Pokemon. This is getting Arcanine and Magcargo specifically. You only play 2 copies because you can only search, realistically, a couple Pokemon in the deck, and a lot of times you can find them off of other things like Great Ball and Ultra Ball. 1 copy of Hisuian Heavy Ball. Look at your face down prizes. You may reveal a basic Pokemon you find there, put it into your hand, then shuffle Hisuian Ball into the prizes. So, Hisuian Ball's honestly been great. You just get access to your prizes. A lot of times you can get, you know, a little burnt up if you prize your only, you know, Slugma and Ditto, or prizing your Radiant Venusaur, or maybe you want to aim for Diancie for a relevant KO, or Phione for a relevant Gust, or Meowth for a relevant discard. Worst case scenario, Hisuian Ball gets nothing. Usually it gets something. But worst case scenario, Hisuian Ball gets nothing, and it's 1 card burned from your hand. 1 copy of Computer Search, discard 2 cards from your hand, search a deck for a card and put it into your hand. This is the best A-Spec for this deck by far. I would not play any other A-Spec. This plays perfectly in this deck because it allows you to both get your hand down low, and it allows you to search your deck for any card, which is very, very strong. 3 copies of Pokémon Catcher. Got the nice golden catcher here, which does not want to load on the website, but I have one of these online, so that's why it's defaulted to this one. And the effect on here actually reads wrong because this is the old printing. You flip a coin. If heads, switch your opponent's active Pokemon with one of his or her bench. I would not play Custom Catcher, I would not play Counter Catcher, and I don't think you want to go heavy on the supporter gusting. Pokemon Catcher just gives you some outs to gust in a situation where you otherwise wouldn't. Remember that this has flip a coin. This print just doesn't in particular. We play 4 copies of Rescue Stretcher. Choose 1, put a Pokemon from your pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 from your pile into your deck. So you're going to go through a lot of Pokemon. You're going to be, you know, getting rid of your hands often. You're going to be going through a lot of single prize attackers. Your opponent will sometimes try to pinpoint pieces to try to break your stride. Stuff like the Radiant Venusaur will be a frequent target of gusting attempts, as well as your Magcargo. You want to be ready to respond with Rescue Stretcher. 1 copy of Pal Pad. Shuffle up to 2 supporter cards from your squad into your deck. This is just a good way to get a second use of Guzma. So you put Guzma back into the deck, and then you can hopefully get another use of it. You gotta be careful so you don't accidentally put back a Grant, because usually you don't want those back into the deck. You sometimes get a Teammates back too, that's pretty good. 4 copies of Focus Sash. This is our build around our biggest advantage over Granville. If the Fighting Hits Pokemon card is attached to has full HP and will be knocked out, it is not knocked out, and instead its remaining HP becomes 10, and then you discard Focus Sash. So, nope, if it wants to click it. You have 130 HP, you get hit when you have a Focus Sash on. If you have full, all 130 HP, the Focus Sash will discard, and you will live with 10 left. Something I have considered in this deck, if you wanted to play a little bit more of a trolly version, you could ditch like the catcher consistency of gusting and maybe a couple balls and play Max Potion, as well as like an Eco Arm to reuse the Focus Sashes, and just go full in on that. Maybe I'll cover a variant of the deck like that someday. You know, your opponent can just never KO Arcanine if you just Max Potion and continually Focus Sash. That would be kind of funny. In this instance, you're just trying to buy extra time because you want to get 2 attacks out of Arcanine. If you're getting 2 attacks with very vulnerable, you're doing at least 320 damage. That's pretty solid for a single prize Pokemon. 3 copies of Float Stone. Pokemon's card statue has no retreat cost, so obviously Radiant Venusaur, pretty thick boy. My dude's got cheeks. Galarian Meowth's got 2 retreat, sadly. Diancie's got 2 retreat. Magcargo's got 3 retreat. There's like, you don't want any of these guys stuck. and you don't have any energy to retreat them either. So yeah, even something like a Phione will sometimes need that to get out of the active spot. So just keep that in mind. 3 is a pretty good count. It's played pretty well. 2 copies of Brooklet Hill. Once during each player's turn, that player may search their deck for a basic, water, or fighting and put it onto the bench. Not only does this help you get your Growliths into play, which is always very strong, and that's why it's mainly played, as well as getting Diancie out. It is also incredible for getting Phione. If your Brooklet Hill is able to stick, you can easily grab a Phione and use it to gust, or just threaten the Phione at any point by keeping it on your bench. Brooklet Hill is incredible. I wouldn't play any other stadium in this deck. The only one maybe you'd want to consider is like a Martial Arts Dojo, but then you have to run Fighting Energy, and it's just not worth it. So at the end of the day, I just think Brooklet Hill is incredible in this deck. I would not play another stadium, in my opinion. Maybe, I guess, Cadix Swell to keep Sunny Bloom online, but I haven't struggled too much with Silent Lab decks. Are you going to beat Shadow Rider? Probably not. Stop asking that question. You're not going to beat Shadow Rider. But it is a lot of fun if you just want to test out in the expanded ladder. It's like pretty smooth, honestly. Believe it or not, when you play like 20 ball search cards, you tend to actually find your Pokemon. It's kind of crazy. I know you're playing like, what, 15, 16, 17, 18? Did I count that right? I probably counted that wrong. But you know, you actually set up pretty smooth. You wouldn't really expect it looking at a deck that has to thin its hand down, but I generally, by turn 2 every game, I've been doing very vulnerable, and I'm, without almost any error, I'm able to chain that every turn. One thing you do have to watch out for is that if your opponent doesn't knock you out, sometimes you can actually get stuck because you top decked a card with Smooth Over that was meant to prepare for being knocked out, and sometimes that can be a bit of a struggle. But, you know, if you're not getting knocked out, I suppose that's kind of a good thing in its own right. So give the deck a try, you know, give your brain a little bit of an exercise, getting the hand down to 0. If you enjoyed this deck profile, I'd make lots of other expanded deck profiles as well as tabletop content. So go check that out if you would. Thank you all so much for watching.